What if a single order, issued in the dead of Arctic night, could freeze the flow of global commerce, and no one dared to challenge it? On a night colder than memory, the ancient stillness of the Arctic was shattered. Over stuttering radio, a Russian command swept across the polar wastes. In an instant, the northern sea route, once a gateway between continents, became an armed corridor. Russian patrols locked it down, declaring these icy waters a sovereign artery. Merchant ships bearing United States or European Union flags were stranded, their journeys halted by an ultimatum no captain had ever faced. A new iron and ice barrier slammed shut across the top of the world. The message reverberated. This essential passage from Asia to Europe, long treated as a global thoroughfare, was now under exclusive Russian control. The world's economic giants looked on as their ships stood immobilized, not only by the sea ice, but by the chilling grip of a geopolitical freeze they could neither ignore nor break. Everything was suddenly at stake. If a few spoken words can clamp shut the world's commercial arteries, who truly commands our destiny? The fate of the global economy, the security of nations, and the very rules that underpin international order all teetered on the edge. Why did Western powers hesitate? And what made Asian heavyweights quietly accept this new Arctic reality? We will unravel how this historic Arctic standoff erupted, and why it threatens to reshape the entire world. First, we must trace the secret buildup that led to this sudden coup. The warning signs were always there, hidden in plain sight. For decades, the Arctic was hailed as the ultimate shortcut, a frozen passage that could trim 10 to 12 days from the trek between Asia and Europe compared to the Suez Canal. That dream has now chilled into a stark new order. The northern sea route is no longer a shared gateway, but a fortress under Russian command. Only days ago, a multinational flotilla pressed northward, led by a United States Coast Guard icebreaker and shadowed by commercial vessels from Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands. Without warning, the radio crackled to life. Russia's northern fleet demanded every ship stop, at once. The message was cold and unmistakable. From this point forward, only ships with a Russian permit, a Russian state pilot on board, and a Russian nuclear icebreaker escort could move ahead. Any defiance, the broadcast warned, would be treated as a breach of Russia's border. For years, the world argued over who controlled these icy waters. With a single command and a show of force, Moscow ended the debate. The Arctic's rules would be written solely in Russian. The stakes are global. Freedom of the seas, a pillar of world trade, now dangles by a thread. Shipping costs, access to resources, even entire supply chains are hostage to decisions made in the Kremlin. But Russia's ambitions do not end with a single decree. What drove Moscow to seize the world's attention at the top of the world? When diplomacy froze, Russia unleashed steel and willpower, forcing the world to witness a new order. The American captain, steering a convoy of 5 European-flagged container ships through the Arctic's shifting ice, eyed the Russian ultimatum. He dismissed it as posturing. With a clipped command, he ordered the ships forward, trusting that Moscow would not risk escalation. But certainty dissolved like frost on steel. Within 30 minutes, Russia brought force, not with more threats, but with a display meant to break resolve. Twin nuclear icebreakers crashed ahead, grinding ancient ice into a wall of shards, each slab rising taller than a truck. Alongside, a gray Russian warship emerged from the white haze, its guns locked on the lead ship, a silent threat more chilling than any broadcast. A Russian frigate slid into position, close enough that every weapon counted. Then the sky erupted. A pair of fighter jets screamed overhead, so low their engines rattled the decks. The message was unambiguous. This was not negotiation. This was dominance, enforced by steel and ice. Faced with overwhelming force, the American captain hesitated only a moment. He ordered the engines to idle. The convoy, millions of dollars worth of cargo, sat trapped, hemmed in by ice and iron. Any attempt to move now risked not just goods, but ships and human lives. News flashed around the globe. In Washington, red lights blinked in the White House and Pentagon. Desperate for options, leaders turned to military chiefs, who could only admit the bitter truth. Russia now commanded the Arctic. More ships, more guns, total logistical supremacy. In Brussels, diplomats argued late into the night, but answers proved elusive. The West could only watch, powerless. Markets reeled. Supply chain managers stared at maps, realizing every passing hour meant mounting losses, delays multiplying, insurance premiums soaring, contracts dissolving. The arteries of the world economy now pulsed under Russia's hand. This was not a passing crisis. It was a tectonic shift. Ignoring it risked not just lost profits, but open conflict, disaster on a global scale. How did Russia achieve such unbreakable control over this vital trade route? And why can no one contest their claim? The explanation lies in years of silent buildup and a ruthless readiness to act when rivals faltered. To understand the roots of Russia's dominance, we must look back, through years of Arctic strategy, investment, and calculated audacity. The seeds of this confrontation were sown long before the world took notice. This was no accident. It was the product of relentless ambition and decades of calculation, fueled by hundreds of billions of dollars spent to seize the Arctic's future. For more than 15 years, Russia poured between $100 and $150 billion into the far north, focusing on three unyielding pillars: building the world's largest fleet of nuclear icebreakers, transforming remote bases into fortified high-tech strongholds, and weaving a vast integrated web of sensors and radars across the frozen frontier. These investments were not mere displays of power. Today, Russia controls the entire northern sea route, every mile, every port, every passage. No ship dares move without Russian permission. Western attempts to protest or pressure have met only cold silence. Even Europe's largest shipping companies, once shielded by international law, have quietly surrendered, signing deals with Moscow just to keep their lifelines open. The United States calls it piracy, but behind closed doors, officials admit hard truths. Russia's supremacy is absolute. Its icebreakers carve the way, its radars track every vessel, its missiles cast a long shadow. Any military response risks disaster. The threat of escalation is ever present, and the odds of success are vanishingly small. Yet as the West fumes, Asia adapts. China and India, giants hungry for reliable trade, see opportunity where others see a crisis. They prefer strict, predictable rules, even if Moscow writes them, to the chaos of uncertainty. Rather than resist, they negotiate, angling for favorable terms in a world order rapidly shifting north and east. The consequences are seismic. The very heart of global trade and power is tilting toward the Arctic. The question is no longer whether Russia controls this corridor, but whether the rest of the world can keep pace or risk being left behind. But Russia's grip is not unchallenged forever. As the ice melts and competition mounts, new fractures threaten to appear beneath the surface. In a world where icebreakers enforce new realities, adaptation is no longer optional. It is survival. Russia's calculated decades-long push in Arctic infrastructure has changed the global game. The Northern Sea Route, once a distant curiosity, is now a profitable toll road and a potent geopolitical lever gripped tightly by Moscow. This is not a simple shift on the map. It is a total transformation of how power and commerce flow between continents. International shipping giants and entire nations now find themselves at Russia's door, negotiating for access to the Arctic corridor. Without Moscow's blessing, the quickest path between Asia and Europe slams shut. The decision is ruthless. Comply, pay more to reroute, or risk exclusion from this vital artery altogether. For the first time in more than 100 years, the Suez Canal has a true rival. Exporters across Asia, especially from China, Japan, and South Korea, are scrambling to cut deals for safe passage. Supply chains worldwide must pivot instantly, recalculating risk, cost, and exposure to Russian politics with every shipment. Clinging to yesterday's rules is now a liability. The old belief that the Arctic would stay open and neutral has collapsed overnight. Those who fail to adjust quickly will face spiraling costs, shrinking margins, and a growing risk of being sidelined in the new order. But this upheaval reaches far beyond boardrooms and cargo manifests. When one nation redraws the rules alone, shockwaves hit every business, every market, every home. Spiking freight costs, shortages, even surges in everyday prices. Ordinary consumers will feel the chill of Moscow's move. Refusing to adapt means more than lost revenue. It brings real security threats and the possibility of being locked out of tomorrow's global alliances. So, what is the true message behind Russia's Arctic gambit, and how should you respond? As the ice melts and the stakes rise, the map of global power is being redrawn in real time. The question is not whether you must adapt, but how quickly you can. Yesterday's boundaries vanished into the Arctic ice. Will you see the world's new shape, or cling to lines that no longer exist? With one bold maneuver, Russia has wiped away the old map of the North. The Northern Sea Route, once an arena for international negotiation, has become a Russian stronghold. This is not only about cargo ships and commerce. This is proof that a single nation, armed with icebreakers and resolve, can redraw the rules of global power. For decades, experts assumed the Arctic would be managed by international law and Western influence. Those beliefs dissolved the moment Russia's strategy forced even its adversaries to adapt. Western nations found themselves with no choice but to comply, while Asian powers calculated that partnership offered more advantages than resistance. The Northern Sea Route is no longer an open question. It is an undeniable fact, enforced by ships, planes, and a relentless will. The consequences for ignoring this new reality are immense. Global shipping costs may skyrocket, supply chains could shift overnight, and access to untouched resources now depends on Moscow's approval. Trade, economies, and alliances are being rewritten as you read this. The balance of power has drifted north, and those who fail to recognize it will be left behind. Seeing the shift is power. Denial is danger. This is history in motion, shaped not by treaties or speeches, but by those who act without hesitation. The Arctic is now the world's newest and fiercest arena for influence. As the ice settles, consider: will you adapt to the new Arctic order, or cling to borders that have vanished beneath the cold?